My dissertation was exploring, what does it mean for us? What is unique about our context as Africans? And one of the biggest unique things is our spirituality.
Hey everybody, my name is Angie Murenga. You're watching Just Angie. This is Mwangi Monday, where we discuss all things governance, and I'm having a conversation with Dr. Sheila Konyu of Optimal Bliss, and we want to talk about spirituality, religion, and African psychology, mental health. It's a whole hodgepodge of things, but I'm so excited about it, and we'll be flowing with her thesis. So the first thing is modern and traditional worldviews. I'll just read something. You can flow or not flow with it, yeah? But it says, when Western psychology is transferred into non-Western contexts, including African society, it may result in the displacement of local culture, customs, and practices. In order for psychologists to address the needs of the African people and bring about transformation, as we practitioners must understand, we as practitioners must understand the systems of thought that underlie African ways of living and being. Powerful. Hey! Dr. Konyu. Now tell us in English. That was
English Mingi.
Break down the story now. What's the story?
So, a lot of times, psychology is usually, it's cloaked in a Western garment.
Yes.
Because it was, brought up within the Western context. And sometimes what happens is we translate it holistically and bring it back into our Kenyan context or African context or non-Western contexts, without sometimes paying as much attention to what is different about this. Are we bringing a culturally laden tool into this context that actually may not fit as well? I think there's a book that has talked about, it's like dentures. It's one of those indigenous psychologists who's talked about it's like wearing dentures where they look good, but they may not fit as well. You're not able to kula the nyama, like the nyamcho.
Yeah, dentures may come out
exactly.
with the nyama, everything, all of it.
Yeah, or this, like they used to have this Americana jacket that's like worn within the winter, and then it's taken to contexts where they are very hot and humid, and you're just transporting a Western cloaked thing ideology in a context that doesn't fully fit. It looks good because it's from the West, but it doesn't fit or understand the intricacies of our culture. So my dissertation was exploring, what does it mean for us? What is unique about our context as Africans? And one of the biggest unique things is our spirituality.
Really? And they always say, there always seems to be a difference between our spirituality and the other world. It's a really good the word other here, but just go to that a bit deeper.
So the Western world, the spiritual and the secular is divided. So spiritual conversations don't go into the marketplace secular context. So even when you learn psychology, you learn it more the scientific, the objective. So looking at it as a biological issue
and as a science.
As a science, exactly. Here, our spirituality is integrated in everything, in our social, in political, in everything. Spirituality is like interwoven, right? So when you bring this Western thing, psychology that doesn't often take into consideration spirituality into our context, where when we look at, for example, when there's a mental illness, there it's perceived purely from, what's the biological problem, what's the scientific, what does the research show, right? Here, when somebody has an illness, it's like, who brought this thing on? What didn't I do? So we perceive it as a spiritual.
Is it witchcraft? Is this from God?
Exactly.
Is it not from
what
God?
Did I know?
Did
exactly. my neighbor look at me?
Look at me in a funny way and send me this thing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our conceptualization of it is as a spiritual problem. In the West, a lot of times it's seen as a scientific or biological problem. And so when they have a problem, you go to the psychiatrist because you're seeing it as a scientific medical problem. Here, when you have an illness, who do you call?
The church.
Kina Pastor Angie, right?
Or
other spiritual leaders.
Yes.
The psychiatrist, the psychologist comes maybe as a last resort. And that's why for me, my cry is, how can we empower and come together? Because in fact, even in my book, I say we need you as the spiritual leaders.
And we need the science.
And you need this side as well, so that we have that integration. So part of the argument is, you know, let's not just fully take and utilize this, but also let's not throw out, some authors have also argued, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are still things within the Western context that are actually useful and helpful for us, but also let's also pay very big attention to who are people, how do they think, how do we package, you know, like the way kids, you package like that cough syrup with the strawberry flavored, so you put them in gummy bear sort of ninis.
So that they can swallow it.
Yeah, so how do we package mental health services or mental health conversations in ways that our people, it's palatable for our people. Sometimes we don't always do that, and that's my desire and my cry.
Great. Have you had great success? Because every time I hear you talk, I know there has to be, first of all, I love the marriage between the two, between the spiritual and the science. Recently we had our Women in Trauma event, which was very good as well, which I feel that came into play, where the spirituality came into play, but the science came into play, and we, you know, have a way forward. But every time I hear you speak, Dr. Konyu, I feel like you need a bigger platform, you need to have bigger audiences, you need to, I feel like you need to equip the church, the body of Christ, There's an equipping that we need. So I don't know whether that's what you see, or what do you think is the way forward?
Yeah, no, I think the way forward is absolutely right. I feel like my desire is actually to participate or come alongside spiritual leaders to help understand, yes, when we see an illness or a mental health problem, there could be spiritual reasons for the person being in that way, right? So if you hear voices, for example, there are voices that could be demonic. It could be demons speaking through that person, and we are not discounting that, and we need to hold that. In fact, when I'm in the West, my cry is like, we need to pay attention to spiritual. Here, my desire is, yes, it's spiritual, but it could also be, no, maybe not but, and it could also be a biological problem. So that we've prayed, we've fasted, we've cast out, actually the person is still unwell. Why not also recommend they go to see the psychiatrist? They come to see a psychologist. Because what happens is we then end up demonizing the person. You know, I come, I've prayed for you, and it's not going, but that's the extent of the skills that I have. Right? So it doesn't go, and then I'm left, my cry is that we victimize the person who's mentally ill, or we shun the family that the person comes from because they don't have enough faith. You didn't have enough faith for that demon to come out. Actually, the faith is, let's go take some medication. And you find that the volume of the voices go down. So even with clients who come where there's a whole spiritual understanding of the illness, I say, okay, you've tried praying, you've tried fasting, you've tried deliverance, and it's good that you've tried those things, but it hasn't worked. Let's try you going to see the doctor and see, and God can be able to work through that, or even explaining. God created our brains. There are chemicals imbalances that sometimes can be explanations for why we behave the way that we do.
And they need to be aligned.
Yeah, and then you find they take the medicine, and I'm like, has the volume of the voices gone down? Yeah, it's gone down. And you're continuing to pray, you're continuing to fast. Good. You know, and that way you're able to help people find freedom. So, yeah, my cry is, let's embrace both. So I would want to continue to empower and learn from the spiritual leader, so that we have this conversation, so that where you feel ill-equipped, then come, let's talk through, let's understand more, let's make sense of suffering, or when you've tried everything and it's still not working, just like the way you pray for someone and you really want them to recover, but they die. Is our faith robust enough to accommodate those kinds of questions? Sometimes it's limited. Sometimes we end up blaming the people, and that for me is where my pain comes from.
Or blaming yourself, because when you say that, like for me, I really prayed for my dad to get well, and when he died, I was like, hey, okay, Jesus, that's the move you can pull. All right, that's the move. So, but I think I was angry for a while, and then I realized, God is God, and he's been God in my life. He was God in his life. So
Yeah.
I guess the faith was robust enough to come back and say, okay, let's do this, you know. That's what is important. But I love the marriage, I feel, between the spiritual and the science. So I think that's very powerful, and it's something that we have to do. There was even someone who reached out to me and they said, oh, you know, I'm having a problem with my, I think, marriage and all that. And I just listened. I said, you know what I'd like you to do? Go see Dr. Konyu first. And if you can't see Dr. Konyu, because we gave a whole list of therapists, this is a list of therapists. First, go see them, and then come back. Yeah. Because also it's important. Is this, you know, because, you know, sometimes when I was a baby, an earlier minister, let's say, taking my steps, I'm still there, you know, 15 years is not a lot.
Angie, you've gone beyond baby.
Let me tell you what, I've gone beyond baby, but there's a lot to do in this ministry,
always a place
in the place of God. But I would be very quick to rush and have compassion and really be in the thing. Then God is like, it would take 5 steps backwards, come back here. Come back here. Now I want you to look at this situation. So there, people have other issues. I've even understood even my own issues, you know, through therapy. I have issues, my attachment style. So first, let's get the therapist, you know, like a basic, so that it's not just about blaming. Yeah. Let's go see myself. I've also understood the place of understanding self. Yes. You know, when I used to complain about my relationships, until I realized I'm also a player in the it was very shocking. It takes 2. So this was not just about one person, this was about you as well. And then there's such power. I feel like when you take back your authority, you own your space, you understand who you are and who you're not. Like I said, when I did the attachment style tests as part of my therapy, that just it explained everything. I should have done it when I was 20, but anyway, such is life.
Yeah, no, attachment style is really about how we learn to trust, and those things are formed from very early on.
Childhood.
And it's important to understand your patterns yourself, and I think that's, I think, a journey that therapy takes us. And even when you're talking about, you know, sort of wrestling with the questions, even when your own father died, I feel like, we need to make room for those laments. Those questions,
lamentations
of like, Lord, I don't understand. Lord, it doesn't make sense. Why have you taken so long? Or why have you done this thing that I didn't see coming? And I think that's another space where we need to give more room for people to wrestle with those questions and be okay to have doubts and questions without feeling like, oh, my faith is threatened. I think that's another space that needs to expand, because I feel like God teaches us so many things in that valley.
Space. In that valley.
Yeah.
He really does.
He really
When you wrestle with him and you allow yourself to wrestle, you learn so much. You learn yourself so much about yourself. You learn about the situation, you know. You really do. And he will really be with you and in the moment and speaking. So that's that therapy. And then you see, sometimes as the therapist, I feel like you'll ask the right questions, you know? There are questions that I'm not going to ask myself. Like, I didn't know there was an attachment style test. So when I did it, I'm like, okay. And then I like, because they give you a report. So there are many other tools, I'm sure, in the whole psychology process that sort of make you understand self, confront self, understand this situation from a spiritual science perspective, and still have your faith. So for me, I think it's very, very, very powerful, and it's very important to wrestle with God. I think it's important. Sometimes we're afraid to wrestle, but wrestling is necessary so that you can get to the conclusion of which way are we going, which way next. No,
that wrestling, because you see, culturally, we have this patriarchal system. You know, we are a hierarchical culture, meaning we respect authority, respect elders. So some people I know wrestle with, like, how, you know, like my parents, I don't just go and talk to my dad like anyhow. I'm supposed to go in a way that's reverent and respectful. And so sometimes people wrestle with feeling like, how can I just go and question God? Like, God is, you know. But then I think when you look at the Psalms, I think there are a lot of embodiments of Psalms that invite us to ask and tell God and share how we are feeling. And sometimes we have to go against those cultural pulls, because we are like, okay, then let me just keep quiet, you know, God is God and he can do. But then now we end up holding that pain, that anger, because we don't feel like we have an outlet. But I'm saying, I think God invites us in relationship to come and wrestle with him, to come and pour our hearts, and he wants to hear that and speak into that space.
So we should be
courageous.
But we should.
Oh, yeah.
And then I like Isaiah 1. Is it one? Where is it where he says, come?
Yes,
Let us reason together. Every time he says that, I feel like he's sitting at the, like we're at a board table.
I know.
He's on that side, because Kwanza we're not on speaking terms. You know, now there has to be distance. So Ebu use it here, where is it here? Ebu, let's talk about this thing. Which is important, and it will give us freedom and the ability to be our real selves.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I really have enjoyed the conversation. So we've got to come back and see what other stories are there. But I hope that you're really learning and getting it, and it's giving you freedom and permission to be. God bless you. See you next week.